Oh, it's Bring It In, True Hoops little Zoom show from quarantine. Today we're talking about the draft. David Thorpe, how are you?
I'm okay. I'm good. How are you doing in your
Um,
fancy red sweatshirt?
I'm so pleased with my red
I
sweatshirt.
love mine. I'm
Saturday.
wearing it when we see Adina again.
So everyone, David bought one of these sweatshirts too, but it's a very warm sweatshirt and it's too warm for Florida.
Freaking hot and humid. Yeah, yeah. We'll get our time. This is a time where I'm jealous of. As my wife and I walked at 8:30 last night, I was wearing a tank top. We were both, of course, in shorts. And as soon as she walked outside, she said, "Ugh, like we still have the heat and humidity. You guys are delighting and running around and romping around like puppies and ice cream, and we're dealing with. I almost jumped in the pool last night. I probably will today. Yeah, it's warm.
Yeah, I'm enjoying the like Adina and Chad of Another Lane, friends of the show, have sold me this sweatshirt, and it came, and I thought that I would have it as another item of clothing, but now I realize it makes me feel like I'm protected from pandemics and dictatorships. Like I just feel,
Impervious to virus and
yeah,
corruption.
yeah,
Yeah, they should put that on their website.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to wearing it, and we'll have a few days here and there. We'll have to. It'll be good.
Okay,
It's
so you and I have been on a journey. The draft is a little bit of a riddle every year and how to cover it, and we talked a while ago about what we're gonna do, and in the early days of the pandemic, you watched a bunch of video of Anthony Edwards and wrote about him. We can talk about that if you want. But at that time, I think I'm right in saying you were pretty open-minded about, the top picks, LaMelo Ball, Anthony Edwards, James Wiseman. And over the last couple of weeks, you dug way in, watched a ton of video, thought about it a lot, made phone calls, read reports, and maybe there were some surprises.
Yeah. Well, I would have argued a few months ago and probably did with you trade down. I'm a big believer in trading down because I think most of the players are about the same. If you're lucky enough to really get a special player and you have to get to 1, 2, or 3 to get them, do so. But most of the players are about the same. Number 5, number 15. I'm a big believer that if every team coached everyone the same and gave them the same amount of oxygen, which means playing time and reps and all that kind of opportunity, you would see a lot more guys drafted 24 do very well. Of course, the top few, tend to be the most talented, and it's different in most drafts. And this draft did not really turn the wheel for me until I started studying James Wiseman.
Yeah.
And the reason why I was interested in doing it is because we've been writing. We wrote a piece about Jokic and Adebayo and Anthony Davis being such dominating players in the most important moments of the playoff this year. And I'd heard that Weissman had some kind of perimeter skills. I didn't know what that meant. So, yeah, that's what got me started looking into it. And what we've been writing about is the fact that big men playing like guards is such a valuable thing. But we've also been writing about big men that can defend in lots of space. Jokic can't. Adebayo can. Davis can. So can James Wiseman. And that's what excited me initially was watching him on defense. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's a kid. He's played 3 college games. And that's probably part of the story too, Henry, is James Wiseman. In 2017, he moved from Nashville to Memphis, and his high school coach, the famous Penny Hardaway of NBA Orlando Magic fame and University of Memphis fame, paid for his family to move to Memphis. I have no problem with any of that. To be clear, I think recruiting should be legal in high school. If you're using kids all the time to help yourself as a coach, why not? How can't the kids benefit either? Obviously, there should be some rules and regulations. But I have no problem with what the family did, especially given where he probably was living in Nashville. But then Penny Hardaway became the head coach at Memphis. James Wiseman went to Memphis. And after 3 games, he lost his eligibility. So that he didn't get a chance to take Memphis maybe to, well, wouldn't have been the Final Four, maybe to win their league and be a top 10 team, hurt his chances for sure.
But sorry, he wouldn't have made the Final Four because the team just wasn't good enough? Is that
No, because there was no NCAA tournament this year.
Oh, you make a good point. Yeah.
Yeah,
Good
right.
point.
Right. In theory, yeah, this team was
Yeah.
good. Yeah. And I don't know if they were good enough or not, but they were a top team.
Yeah.
And he's incredible. They waxed University of Illinois Chicago. Their second game is a good mid-major team who had a good season. And I think they might have been up close to 40 in the first half. And Weissman only made 4 baskets. He only took 4. He made all 4. He went 9 of 14 from the field. He blocked 5 shots, including one like the 4th row of the bleachers. He would. I mean, it didn't matter. They were not competitive, and they should have been. So, so that really kind of hurt his luster, I think, a little bit, because he was the number one player coming out of high school, for whatever that means. But anyway, what intrigued me is when teams now are thinking about not draft. DeAndre Ayton was a center, drafted number one over Luka Doncic, and that was almost for sure a gigantic mistake. Like, it's hard to underestimate. It's hard to understate how bad of a mistake that was. And not because Ayton's not going to be really good. Like, he shoots threes. He can't defend like Wiseman, but he shoots threes. Henry needs a big, strong guy. And Phoenix didn't lose a game in the bubble, as you know. But Luka is going to be an MVP candidate for 7-8 straight years. And DeAndre might never be that. So that is hurting Wiseman. And it makes no sense to me. Number one, Luka's not in the draft. There is no Luka in the draft that I can see. And Wiseman isn't Ayton. He's a much more flexible, agile perimeter defender, which means he can play at all times.
Are you saying to me, David, that to contend, you have to have one of these Anthony Davis type big men, or just that it's a nice to have?
I would lean towards the former because of defense, not because of offense. Yeah. Because if you think about the way people are trying to spread the floor, so let's go backwards a little bit. Okay. If you've got LeBron, if you've got Luka, I don't know, even I guess you could say Kawhi. Like, it's a tiny number of primary ball handling scorers at varying sizes, Steph Curry, that can really move the needle more in your direction. But even with that, you still need to spread the floor with shooters and whatever. Think about the Lakers this year. The fact that they had AD made them not have the need for as good as shooters as like Miami needed to have, because they didn't have AD and LeBron together. You need guys to defend all that space. Mm-hmm. And you'd like those guys to be 7 feet tall and really athletic, as opposed to 6'3", right? And very athletic, even like Anthony Edwards. So I think that, I think to be able to win a championship, you've got to play top 10 level defense. And for that to happen, you need tall, athletic, agile guys that can guard lots of space. As we know, Henry, you can play traditional centers off the court. Kelly Olynyk had one great game in the NBA Finals, and we almost never saw Dwight Howard again. And we never saw JaVale McGee even before the series started, 2 traditional centers, because they can't get out and guard space comfortably. Wiseman can't. So even if he was just an average offensive player, which he's not, and we'll get into that, like, he's never going to come off the floor when he's, 22, 21. Like, bam, you never have to have that guy off the court because he can't match up with 5 shooters, because he can't.
Yeah, that's we've been a little confused about the lesson here, right? It used to be just like everybody 7 feet tall was drafted first, roughly speaking. As you point out, two centers drafted ahead of Michael Jordan, right? Yeah. And then it was Jordan started to change that, right? And then we've had a lot of, and Luka, as you're saying, almost makes us think the opposite, right? Which is like, never take the big man. But I think maybe what I'm learning from editing you is, no, the lesson is like, you absolutely need the big man, but he just needs to be able to move in space, operate in space, make decisions in space, shoot, etc. And some teams will have those, and many teams won't. And that's a problem, right? This is a problem that specifically the Warriors have to solve right now. They don't have that big man.
Well, that's the other part of this equation is the Golden State's so small. I mean, they're just I mentioned in the article, the ACB, which is the best league in Spain, they have 7-footers all over the place. Yeah. And Golden State has none of them. Yeah. So, I mean, their best defender now is, 6'7", 6'6", Draymond Green, right? I feel like think about Rudy Gobert. So Rudy Gobert went 27th from France, couldn't catch the ball. Right, Wiseman has good hands. I'm not sure he has amazing hands. I can't tell 3 games. He has good hands for sure. The fact that he's a very capable ball handler, which we'll get into a little bit later maybe, only enhances the idea that he'll have very good hands, which is valuable. But Rudy had terrible hands and was super skinny and really couldn't get out in space a whole lot. And that's why he went number 27. Mm-hmm. If you knew right now you could draft a Rudy Gobert clone in this draft, would he go number 1? Probably. All right, he's led the league in dunks. I think he has more dunks the last 3 years than anyone in the game. Giannis is second. I could be juxtaposed on that just by that. It's one or the other, but I think Rudy led the league in dunks 2 years in a row. I don't remember how it finished this year. He's, two-time defensive player of the year. He's a fantastic pick and roll scorer now. Like, he catches and dunks everything around the rim. He anchors your defense, and he actually get out and guard some space. You can play Rudy Gobert against shooters. He's not as good as I think Wiseman might be on the perimeter. He'll be better than Wiseman inside. It's just hard to find those guys. There's not a lot. If I was coaching a big man in 9th grade, I'd make him into a guard defensively, which means I would let him play guard on offense, work on ball skills, get comfortable with being out in space. I'm a big believer that if you do stuff outside offensively, your brain wraps around the idea of moving in space more defensively. And so I would do that. And I would, Wiseman's not afraid to go dunk on you. In fact,
no, he loves it.
Oh my! In his first game, Henry, he's flying down the middle of the rim. We didn't show this in a GIF because it's scary to watch. And he goes to dunk on a guy and flips. It's amazing to break his neck. It was one of the most violent, in terms of, I guess not violent, one of the scariest falls I've ever seen in college that ended up being neutral. He took 2 free throws just fine. But he flipped. He is an animal around the rim. Like, he wants to hurt you.
There's one that we did include, the one where he just like, you'll describe it.
Yeah, no, it's pick and roll.
Yeah.
The guy threw the ball to 6 feet. Like, what are you doing? You throw to 12 feet. That's what we teach. And he caught it at his chest and then quickly came up here. Boom. Right. That's why I put it in there. It's a hard dunk to make, and you don't realize it, but he's catching it below the rim and quickly finishing it. Yeah. There's some hands and coordination required to that. But I could have shown a bunch of race the rim, full speed, super powerful dunks. And the point on that is this. There are big men today who have perimeter skills and don't want to mess with the paint. And I think that lowers their value. Doesn't mean you can't coach that up. Of course you can. This guy has no problem with that. He has no problem scoring in the paint. His 15-foot jumper, we included a GIF of one, looks beautiful. A little fadeaway, which is even better. Comfortable. He shoots well from the free throw line. I think he didn't have a 4.0, but he had close to one in his 1 year. And I realize these guys aren't really earning it compared to the average person commonly. I can't say for sure. But it wasn't a 2.5, right? He knew he was leaving. He wasn't even allowed to play. Like, he could have just withdrawn from school. He didn't do that. My sources tell me, like, I looked for red flags. We wrote about this. Nothing. The worst thing someone said to me about him was he doesn't know any better other than he's just a 19-year-old stud, meaning he doesn't have any preconceived notion for what it means to work hard. He just does what he said. That's enough for me. Like, my son got up at 6 a.m. to do ball handling drills because he wasn't 7'2" and super long and athletic. And I never told him to do it ever. He just knew he had no other choice. So when you have a choice, you can be lazier, but just give me someone that does what he's told, because if you would hope the franchise that drafts him gives him the blueprint for All-Star. And it sounds to me like he'll just do that. Like, problem solved. Problem solved. So I don't see how, this is what we write about. The idea that Golden State is considering these other players might have to be the case because someone could go to 1 and take Wiseman, including Golden State, if they think, like, I think they should, whatever they have to do to make sure they get Wiseman. He ain't dropping a 3. It would be shocking that he would drop to 3. I think it'd be shocking to drop to 2. I don't see LaMelo Ball, who I'm studying next week, Anthony Edwards in the same conversation as Wiseman, which is why we call the piece, it's a one-player draft.
That was a little bit bold. We did that yesterday on the phone. But yeah.
There's one sure thing in this draft. He's the one sure thing.
Yeah. Is he the kind of sure thing that succeeds no matter where he goes?
I think so. So, yeah. So that's another point. So you've heard me talk about this now since I met you in 2007. There are some guys who can be amazing no matter where they go, who they play for. They're the most gifted of players that way. But then there's the Kawhi Leonards who need the right place. And then they can be as good as anyone else, and which you would argue probably Kawhi is. I think Tim Duncan was that. I think it's a fallacy to think that Tim Duncan would have been Tim Duncan no matter where he went. I think I saw him play in college. I saw him in person close for a week for World University games. And he was a rising junior and he was pretty good, but he wasn't this guy. And I think the Spurs and Duncan combined to turn him into Well, you had him top 5. I have number 6 all time. That's incredibly, heady space, right? I think Wiseman would be better off going to a Golden State type franchise, but he's so talented that if the Bulls took him, he's going to be great. If the Knicks took him, like, he's not Kevin Knox. He's another step above that because he's 7'1" or whatever. But he won't be as good. Like, there's no doubt he needs the right place to reach his full potential, which is why I like Golden State too, because he doesn't have to be great. He can focus on defense. The Knicks, I see. The Knicks, yeah. The Knicks worries me a little bit. But new management, they'll be better.
Maybe, but don't wish it on him. Like, we're talking
about. No, of course not.
We're dreaming about the future for James Wiseman. Don't wish this on him.
If you could script the best place for a what I understand to be I think the one, it's not a red flag. The one knock on him, Henry, in my research was that he isn't this, alpha type. Like Sebastian Telfair came out of New York City. He was used to limousines. You take it for whatever you want it. What's that?
Chris Paul alpha type coming out of
college. So they were used to just being the greatest and comfortable in that environment. Wiseman, I think a lot of tall guys aren't really proud of being tall. They're shy about it.
Yeah.
And they grow out of it just fine. In almost all cases, they grow out of it and appreciate their size. I think he'll be better. I think the perfect place for him is to, hey, man, dunk the ball, right? Be our rebounding, shot blocking force, guard threes, play 20, 25 minutes a game the first few months of the season. We got this. So we're going to bring you along. And then in not just the end of this season, but in the future, next couple of years, as guys like Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Draymond are really near the ends of their career, they can just assist this guy in theory, and because he could be the man, that would be something pretty special. I think that would be the best thing for him.
So I talked many times on the show about your tone of voice when you get excited, and you can picture him on the Warriors, and it all fits together. And here's how much you play him in the early part of the year, and here's what happened later in the year, and how much they win. That sounds amazing. I'm convinced. I love it. However, they're getting phone calls right now, right? They're getting offers for that second pick. If you were Bob Myers, what's the deal you take? What would you accept? Trade away the second overall pick.
But I guess you would look at it from a process standpoint. So it would have to be someone younger than 25. It would have to make our team better immediately, so that if I wanted to give a gift to Curry and Klay and Draymond, their core 3, and I call it a core 4. I think Looney should be part of the core, especially at the price. His price point's $5 million a year. I think he's being paid, but he's just a good glue guy on both ends. The core 3, we all know who they are. If you want to give a gift to them and give them the best chance to win this year, you could argue a Bradley Beal, but it doesn't solve the center problem, right? You'd have to try to solve that problem some other way. And there's ways to do it. It would have to be 25 and younger, for me anyway, unless I strictly was going for what the Clippers are doing, which I think is a mistake. Like, I don't think Golden State owes it to Steph, Klay, and Draymond to make the Golden State be a desert for 10 years, like the Clippers might be, just to win for a couple years. Although I will say the Clippers have some young talent. They're so loaded with everything. I would want some young, talented, big guy who I have to look to see who that might be.
None of them, though.
That's right.
Caleb's talking about
so
Embiid.
Few. Yeah. I would be hesitant to do any deal. If I could I would trade up. I would more likely do that to make sure I got this guy, so that in 3 years from now, when he's 22, nearing 23, and really starting to compete for all league type teams. I think he's got that potential, like Bam this year, right? He's got a higher ceiling than Bam does. He's a better shooter than Bam, and quicker. I think he's quicker than Bam.
And he's longer. He's way longer.
Yeah, for sure. He's way taller and longer, right? And I love Bam Adebayo, and I think he can play like Bam. I think if I'm Steve Kerr, I'm seeing. Well, think about this. So if I can run Miami's offense, if I can take the Cuisinart and sprinkle in some Duncan Robinson dust for Klay Thompson, which they already do kind of anyway, right? They do it a different way. But and Wiseman can be my Adebayo. Hello. They can run it with Looney. Looney's a ball handling player. He played guard in high school. Kevon Looney did. So, and he guards really well in wings. That would excite the hell out of me. And if I would say to Steph, we'd make a mistake if we go all in for 1 year, when with Wiseman, we have a 4-year window now where I think with you and Clay and Draymond, we can continue to compete for a championship. I'd rather 4 years to win a ring than one really good year, you know?
Can they play? I mean, just to explore. So second pick and Wiggins, and I guess whatever else for Embiid. Let's say that both teams would go for that. Can they play Embiid on this team? Like, would that work?
No, unless Draymond learned how to shoot the three again.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't solve that problem to me. I mean, the answer, of course, they could play him. There's some risk. It would be stupid, in my opinion, if Golden State would do that.
Yeah.
I don't trust Embiid's knees any more than anyone else does. And the chemistry issue. Well, I think Wiseman. You know, we in the piece we compare Wiseman's fit with Golden State to Kawhi with Manu, Tim Duncan, and Tony Parker and Pop.
Yeah.
Like Kawhi.
And you called me to say that was your favorite part of the story.
Well, I forgot that I wrote it. Yeah, I'm not a writer like you are. I just some stream of conscience. I get it all out there, and then we try to clean it up. And I don't remember what made the paper and what didn't. So I was reading the article that you finally published this morning. I'm like, hey, I like this because nobody thought of Kawhi as anything. And remember when Pop first said he's the future face of our franchise? That was such a shocking thing to read. This guy couldn't shoot or dribble. And I've reminded people of this for years. He was the worst athlete at the Chicago pre-draft camp. Now, you could argue that he scuttled the workout in order to drop to San Antonio. I've never read that, but I have thought that. I think Pop did pull the plug on the air conditioning in the first finals, in the last finals against the Heat, the first game. I've done that before, not for NBA draft workouts, but like 5-star basketball workouts where I knew I wanted a player and he knew me. And I said, just do terrible in the draft. Oh, yeah, people do that kind of shit. So it's possible that this person told
Kawhi. You didn't mess with the air conditioning, though. That was not what you did at 5
No, most of 5 stars outdoors, so I couldn't control Mother Nature.
Oh, okay.
But Kawhi jumped 29 inches, I think, in the vertical. That was the worst. So he looked like he's a better athlete than he was, at least in the workout. But he didn't really have a position. He couldn't shoot. He just didn't have a position. He was just a basketball player, I guess. And then when Pop said that, it was so surprising. But with those 3 Hall of Famers around him and in that environment, and he wasn't asked to do a lot at first in San Antonio. It was a process. And I happen to think it was perfect for him. And Wiseman really could use that process because he is going to have some failures. And if he's failing on a bad team and then is ripped apart for it, like that's going to impact his confidence. Whereas playing for a team like Golden State with those confident guys who know how to play and can teach him so much while they expect him to help them win, I think that's a perfect environment. That's when he'll be at his best. Yeah.
That's why I'm excited for him to end up there instead of in Minnesota. But you say if you had Karl Anthony Towns and ran the Timberwolves, you would take him first anyway.
For sure. Yeah. I would. Well, look at it this way. When Portland had Nurkic and Jokic, had they known what they had, they would have got a lot. They would have got a lot more for Nurkic.
Denver had Nurkic and Jokic.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Hello. Yeah. When Denver had Jokic and Nurkic, and Nurkic initially was the guy, and then Jokic came after, they could have got more for Nurkic. There's nothing wrong with having 2 franchise level centers. And if Karl Anthony Towns never decides to play defense, because offensively he's a joke, like he is a cheat code like we don't have in the league really offensively, but defensively he's a problem and was under Thibodeau, so that's concerning. Well, now at least you have your hedge with Wiseman. But they could play some together, and of course he could play in the minutes Karl's not playing. And then you could always trade Wiseman for a really good player to play next to Karl Anthony Towns if it turns to be the better player. So yeah, I would take him just because I'll get into the LaMelo Ball stuff. There's nothing I'm going to see on tape on LaMelo, who I'm studying now, that is going to change my mind because I've seen enough already, which we'll get into when I publish the piece I think a week after next. But I think Wiseman's the best prospect in the draft.
Now, rookies don't usually help their teams win, right? We do this thing around this time of year. We're like, oh, this team needs a power forward. That team needs a shooting guard. So they're going to plug one in from the draft and then they'll be good. But like Kevin Durant in Seattle didn't help them win at all.
Not for 3 years.
Yeah. Derrick Rose and on and on. There's like a lot of examples of this. There are very few examples, in fact, of what Tyler Hero did this year, right? Where you're 20-ish and you're actually making a good team better in the minutes you're out there. It doesn't never happen, but it's very rare. You think Wiseman could play that role for the Warriors?
I do. There's concerns there because he played only 3 games. Hero played, 4/5 of a season for Kentucky because of the pandemic. Well, maybe closer to 6/7. But I just think because they can really define his role, and I think their coaching staff is so good and they have such a good plan that he could be a positive force for the minutes he's out there. I don't feel that way if he was playing 32 minutes a game with the starters. Even if he was a positive, he'd be less a positive than a more veteran player. This game is a lot about thinking and anticipating and knowing your opponent and knowing your game. It's a big part of that is knowing your game, what you're capable of and not capable of. And he's going to have a problem with that at first. But I just think they can define his role so well. And there's who wouldn't want to run pick and roll with Steph Curry, with Klay Thompson on the other side, right? Yeah. That it's just easy. It's easy basketball for Wiseman. Think Clint Capella and James Harden, right? And this is not something Golden State has done a lot of. So Wiseman gives them a chance to add tricks to the Cuisinart. They can make some adjustments to what they're doing and make him harder to guard. And then the other thing too is just his ability to race in transition. That is ready for the NBA right now. He's a racer. He wants to fly and dunk. And if you're the Warriors, I think you want to push pace with their talent. And they've got Eric Pascal's an interesting player who made second team all rookie, maybe first team all rookie this year, I think.
But he's 6'6".
Yeah, he's a wing, right? He's a wing.
Yeah.
They have some young guys I saw in the G League. They'll have some, and I think this is an important point. The better teams are going to better utilize their G League players. Like Duncan Robinson was a G League just 2 seasons ago, right? So was Kendrick Nunn. Right, so was Kendrick Nunn, who was.
But the Warriors, to be honest, I did the exercise of going through their roster yesterday, and I guess the idea of this lost season where none of the stars played significant minutes would be that young talent would be emerging all over. You'd be Duncan Robinsons all over the place, right? They really didn't have that. Like the Warriors roster was mostly swings and misses, right? I mean, you agree?
So yes, because you can't just throw young guys out there, right? You can't just. They look silly. I've told the story before. Back when I used to allow 5-on-5 action in my training, I had a good high school player who had signed with literally the worst Division I team called North Florida. They had been Division II. They moved up. His name was Justin Cecil. He's in my book. And when Justin was playing, Justin played so hard. He's a 6'6" white kid, very athletic, very aggressive, from a private school in Lakeland, Florida, rural Lakeland, Florida. But I loved him. He played so hard. He was a beast. I let him play with our pros sometimes. And he was getting tip dunks and race out dunks and making easy passes. And I called his head coach, Matt Cocullen, who had formerly been at Notre Dame. I said, he's going to be your best freshman for sure. He's like, really? We weren't sure even to take him. I said, he's killing it with my pros. And I'm talking about like guys scoring 20 points a game in the NBA, pros and lottery picks like Lou Aldang and Jared Jeffries. And then we let him one time play with the college kids who were training there. And he was terrible. And I wasn't surprised at that, but our coaches were surprised. And I said, this is the one thing that's scary is when he gets to North Florida, he's going to be surrounded by a bunch of guys like him, and all of his weaknesses will be exposed. So Warriors this year with a bunch of young guys, they look like a bunch of young guys, right? That's why Wiseman with the core 3 there, and Looney, who didn't play either this year. Mm-hmm. And I think I don't know if they can add another, like they're really, well, first of all, their guys this year got much better in terms of experience. So watch how much better some of these other guys this year are playing with the core 4, right? Mm-hmm. Is they'll fit in better too. They'll be asked to do less, and then they can accelerate better.
I'll tell you one other argument for Wiseman if you're running the Warriors. I mean, not to sell past the close, but wow. There's only one starter spot that is potentially available, right? Like Looney's spot is the only spot where anyone's not going to be, you know what I mean? Like, so if they got whatever, some amazing shooting guard, they're coming off the bench, period, right? There's just no other way to do this?
Well, so let's try it this way. So let's say they could trade number 2 for Bradley Beal.
Yeah.
Right. So now you're starting Curry, Beal, Thompson, Green, Looney. And I
Yeah.
love Looney, but that doesn't solve. Remember, Looney only started in the playoffs 2 seasons ago because Cousins got hurt. Like
Yeah.
it's just the not having the real center comes with a tax, comes with an energy tax, comes with a limited ceiling defensive tax, right? They need those things. So I agree with you. I think that they're better off bringing Wiseman and letting him be the first guy off the bench until he's ready to take that lead, unless they can sign a JaVale McGee type for the minimum. I'm not sure what their cap is. And they got some guys, maybe a 2-way player, a G League player that can actually fill some of that space too. But Wiseman has so much potential. They're better off losing some games early. And unlike LA, the Lakers, the Clippers, who played into September, early October, Golden State's guys been off for a while. They've been training, they've been, rehabbing. But when other teams are having to maybe rest their stars, we'll probably talk about that if the season starts December 22nd. Golden State won't have to.
Right.
Those guys are, if they're healthy, which I think they should be, they'll be chomping at the bit to go play.
So you're watching video and it becomes a 1-player draft in your assessment. And now I see the Hornets, there's a report that they might want to trade up for Wiseman. Like it seems to me that when there's a super talented, super high ceiling 7'2" guy, super athletic, the odds are pretty good that lots of people will be very drawn to that guy. Right. Is it all a joke? Like, could he fall to 2? Like, or is he really just going to go number 1? It's just a question of who gets that pick.
I am not a big believer that 30 teams are really well run. So the chances are there's a team dumb enough to take Ball or Edwards before him is it's not zero. It's a non-zero chance that they're going to think that the Edwards is the next Dwayne Wade. LaMelo Ball is this transformational Luka Doncic star in the making, with a following for fans and ticket sales whenever fans can come back. I think it's silly compared to Wiseman. Again, if Luka was in the draft, I would take Luka for sure. If LeBron was in the draft, for sure, LeBron James. But those guys aren't in the draft, right?
Yeah. Well, we only would need one team. Of course, there are some badly run teams, but you'd only need one team to really love Wiseman to make a big offer to get or you need that team to be the Timberwolves. But
but you also need one team to make Minnesota deal they can't refuse to take, and then they take Ball and Edwards.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know what the odds are on that. If I'm Golden State, I'm saying to Minnesota, call me before you do any deal. Just let us be your last phone call. They've done a deal before. They did one with Wiggins, right?
Yeah.
That
you can have him back.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that won't happen. That's funny. I thought about that just not deal. I would expect the new guys running Minnesota, who we respect. We respect the guys that run Minnesota now. But owners have their own say. So who knows what the owner's going to want to do. I've even envisioned a scenario where Golden State takes on Towns. I just don't know how they do it without trading Wiggins, because Minnesota could just start over if they wanted to, go down one spot and get whoever and load up on whomever. They probably won't do it with Golden State, but I think Minnesota. There's an argument Minnesota just says press the reset button again, because now we're new people running it, and if the owner says I want to do that, let's trade Towns, right? Who knows what happens from there? Because I'm sure Golden State would love to have Towns for sure.
Well, here we don't know the finances too, right? Like, do they need to goose up local TV ratings and sell tickets when they can, or are they more like, let's try to win in 5 years? Like, what's the program, right? We don't really get to know that.
Yeah, we don't. In Minnesota, they've been rebuilding for so long. I feel for their fans and my buddy Jim Peterson. They wanted to embrace a winner, and I get it. And I do think that they've got the material because of Carl, who is a crazy talented offensive player. But they've been broken for a long time. It's not so easy to fix.
You said that this is a big statement. You like the floor of James Wiseman in your mind is Bam Adebayo.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that he can be an all-star no matter where he goes. He is, it's not like he was Giannis coming out of Greece with super skinny arms, which in America might make you, everyone lifts weights in America now. Okay. Not where Giannis was from in Greece, but every high school program pretty much has weightlifting. And with a player like Wiseman, there are trainers who would train him for free for their own marketing abilities, right? Physical trainers. So if he was skinny, that'd be a red flag. He's not. Like he's going to be built like David Robinson. Remember, David Robinson had pipes. I have BBs, pipes, right? Robinson was huge, right? Not when he was at Navy, but when he got to San Antonio, he was just cut and big and strong. James Wiseman is moving in that direction now. He's 19 years old.
Yeah.
So he's going to be this physical presence. He's got skills. He's apparently super coachable, humble, loves to race, loves to dunk, shoots threes. He does. He shoots threes. Watch. I didn't include it, but you can go to YouTube and just try James Wiseman 3. You'll see him making threes and likes it. But he also likes to dunk too. I just don't see a downside for any of that. And the biggest thing, I get back to it, and we included this, the GIF, I look at stance. One NBA coach said to me, like, you look at DeAndre Ayton, a guy that coached DeAndre Ayton, said, he doesn't coach him now, but he said to me, when you see him get down, he's leaning forward. It's just not easy for him to sit in a defensive stance and look naturally ready to slide. That's typical of lots of big guys, right? Which is fine in the post. Not fine when you're guarding out at 28 feet and having to move all over the place and run around. There's so much space to guard. Ayton's going to have a problem with that always. You can find ways to hide it a little bit in your schemes, and he can get better at it too. But James Wiseman, in his, I think the video we have is his second game, the GIF. I think it was against Illinois Chicago. He's guarding at 24 feet, looking like a guard. The guard dribbles. He just slides right with them, arms wide, and an easy block shot, and then rebounds it, no problem, showing some coordination. Yeah, he's going to start and stop and move around, no problem. I just don't see, I don't see a downside for him. And so if he never really develops the three, he's Bam Adebayo. I will say there's a caveat. You got to let him be Bam. If a team doesn't recognize he's going to handle the ball, this is where Spoelstra deserves a lot of credit. And John Calipari, who had to be convinced a little bit that Bam could do some interesting things. It's a mistake to look at Wiseman as a center offensively. He's a basketball player. So he should be treated like a basketball player. Allow him to do lots of things like a basketball player. Maybe not shoot threes right away, although I would be fine with it. If you want to get really good at being a ball handler in traffic and making important, like Bam can really pass. I don't think Bam is Magic Johnson as a passer, but because he's a big guy in space and the angles you get in the pinch post positions he plays, you don't have to be Magic Johnson to get 4 or 5 assists a game. I think Wiseman can do some of that stuff, but he's good enough where he can explosively fake the hand up, go by you, and hammer dunk like Bam loves to do. That can do as a rookie. So, yeah, I think he's going to be an all-star. I don't know if Bam's going to be an all-star every single year. He had a great year this year. There's a good chance he'll have 3 or 4 all-star games more in him at least. I think Wiseman will have the same.
Devin has a question. I think I'm a little worried about the answer. Do you like LaMelo being the Warriors' 6th man?
Oh, hell no. Hell no. But Devin, you're going to have to wait until I publish my piece before I explain why. I will, to be fair, Henry knows I say this all the time. Everyone has a chance to grow up. And I don't mean that from a maturity standpoint, LaMelo. I'm not at all knocking that. I don't really know. No one's seen him in a long time. But by that, I mean you have a chance to change the way you compete and play. LaMelo certainly has a chance to do that. He's a very talented player. But betting on the come for him is worrisome to me compared to Wiseman. That's for sure. Edwards too. Yeah, Edwards too. Winning matters. Winning matters.
Yeah, it does. So we see if Gerard wants to join us. Gerard, are you there?
Yeah. I'm sure he has an opinion too.
I'm sure he does.
He probably watched him in college more than I did. I don't watch college.
Hey, look, there's Gerard.
Hello. No, I didn't watch Wiseman. I mean, I watched a couple of the games, and
Yeah.
I was high on him as you were, Coach. And I think, yeah, in that Golden State system, I think he would be perfect. I mean, he's incredible, and I think having Draymond and all that stuff around him would help his curve be a little less bumpy, right? It's gonna be bumpy because he's young.
Right, I agree.
Less bumpy. That's all. And I think, to your point, and you see this better because you're a coach. I loved your point about you think he could go anywhere, although the Knicks make me really.
Sorry, Randy.
Sorry, Randy. Yeah, that's like disaster central. And as far as LaMelo, I mean, the talent you see is there. He doesn't shoot it well, but he's big, he's athletic, he's got skills. Everyone, to your point, Coach, should be allowed the chance to grow up, right? And maybe with time, and him especially, the right system and team development around him will be good for him. He goes to some place and they give him the keys to the franchise right away.
I really worry about that. Again, I'm going to save it for when I write my piece, but there's lots of baggage. This is all part of it, right? When Henry mentioned the Bam Adebayo floor, like we have to consider that if you're drafting is what, what's the bust potential? What would that look like? All right. That's what I always say is what does a bust look like in this particular situation? I don't see one possible for Wiseman, obviously barring injury, but I'm not aware of any injury issues either.
Yeah, no.
Like this guy's been the best player in his class for a while, right? This isn't just a new thing for him. And again, I go back to that strength he's got, the arms that he has, that he wasn't born that way, right? Herschel Walker, you guys don't remember Herschel Walker, but I hated Herschel. I was a Gator fan, so I hated Herschel.
Hated Herschel.
Hated him. He ran all over the Florida Gators, and I was not even in college then, but he apparently did push-ups. Sorry, Herschel, like that alone doesn't work. He was a world-class Olympic sprinter, literally,
yeah, he was.
And was built like a heavyweight boxer because of push-ups. There's some genetic advancements going on there for him. He was born, he was just lucky that way. That's not the case with James Wiseman. Like James had to work for that body. That's a clue. Like this guy's not afraid to get in the weight room and get stronger, and you need to be. Look at Anthony Davis. I think we wrote about this a few weeks ago. Anthony Davis, when he was at Kentucky, remember Anthony Davis in his last game as a Kentucky player, he made one shot.
Yeah.
He made some free throws, but I believe he made one field goal in that game when they won the national championship.
Super
skinny dude. He's a monster now. Monster. Like, I don't know what whoever's doing his tailor is. Yeah. There's a lot of fabric covering that chest he's got. That's work. I don't think Wiseman's afraid of work at all. And that counts when you're 7'2" or whatever he is.
Widest shoulders in the NBA, I think, are Rudy Gobert. I walked up next. I was like, what the he has to turn sideways. I was like, what the hell?
To that point on shoulders, I'll tell you a story. We always measure height, right? So to the top of your head, which I think accounts for in some players bigger head, longer neck, which shouldn't matter. And one of my players played in the NCAA tournament game against Cherokee Parks from Duke, who was not a 7-footer. But he said to me, he's like, Coach, he's got a short neck, but his shoulders, this player was a very high level college player. His shoulders were so much taller than mine. It really affected me. Like he's this huge man that is denigrated some or downgraded some because his neck is shorter. But those tall, wide shoulders, there's a breadth about you. There's a presence about you that matter. So I do think it's not just Rudy's length and Anthony Davis's length. It's the width of their shoulders. And Wiseman looks to me, I've never stood on the court with him. He's a big dude. He's a big, agile dude that looks to block shots. That's why we talk about he's not afraid to make plays in the paint, right? I understand the fear. That's what the bust looks like. The bust is the guy that wants to be Kevin Durant and will never be Kevin Durant. Yet he's built like Kevin Durant plus some pounds to be able to dominate in the paint. Well, Wiseman is very happy to kill you in the paint. He just don't mad at him because he can shoot the ball too. He doesn't only gravitate to shoot, right? He's happy to kill you in the paint. That's a big factor for me.
These NBA players have extraordinarily unusual bodies, a lot of them, right?
Yes.
And one thing that really struck me is like almost everybody has a tiny waist.
Mm-hmm.
It is amazing. Like they're skinny, they're light and quick, but this shoulder thing is I mean, this is a terrible thing to do, but a quick story from Media Pickup with like, Grant Long and Steve Smith and stuff, Brent Barry, right? Like those wide shoulders, you have to run around these people to get where you want to go on offense and defense. And like certain calculations you do as a basketball player, and you're like, oh, I can make it here and there and follow this guy. But like, no, you can't. Like, I mean, NBA players obviously have coped with this better, but like it's a giant obstacle, like quite literally.
It is, being a former swimmer and swim coach, like it's the V taper, right? Like it comes this way and then the body just goes like this, right? It's quite impressive when you look at it. And to hear NBA players talk about it, right? Like when someone's setting a screen, it's like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm going around that thing. Like, like just do it and they're big and they're like, no, I want no part of any of that. It's interesting.
When the Lakers had Powell and Bynum and Lamar Odom, the players I was helping during those times would always talk about, Henry may remember this, they would always talk about 21 feet, man, 21 feet. They were talking about 3 really tall 7-footers, really wide. That's just, it's hard to score against those guys. Lamar was so agile, he's someone I thought about with Wiseman.
Yep.
Lamar's so talented. Oh my God.
Oh goodness. Too talented. The difference was what I was just saying. I think Odom was in love with his skills because Odom could have played like Wiseman, but he wanted to show that he was a guard.
Right.
Where I haven't felt that way watching Wiseman in college anyway, or even in high school. In high school, I always, if you took a stopwatch and started every time a player was around the rim and then stopped it whenever he wasn't, you want that number to be really high for a 7-footer, and for Wiseman to be very high. For Odom, it wouldn't be. Or for Durant, it wouldn't be. But who's Kevin Durant? Lamar Odom wasn't.
Right.
And that's why he was a good 6th man and not an MVP candidate and a champion that way, right? As the best player. Durant is that much of a freak, right? Giannis, same thing. But even with Giannis, he's around the rim a lot more, right? Because that's where he effectively scores. He can just be a primary ball handler too. Wiseman can be a primary ball handler, not dribbler, ball handler, if you run an offense for him. He's not going to be Lamar Odom, bring the ball before a bunch and all of that. Like, he's not Jokic that way yet. He's allowed to get better. Jokic is a point guard. He's just a point guard in 7-footer's body, right? I think Wiseman understands his role really well. But that we wrote about this too, guys. The West is loaded with all these dudes that are big and tall and good. Like, the Golden State needs that more than Kevon Looney to have a chance with Steph and Clay and Draymond.
I think that's the point for them, right? So I think Golden State's smart enough to realize that. They know they have enough on the perimeter and wing. Like, it's the size they need inside to compete in the West, because that's what's going to kill them, right? It's like when they have to go up against the Lakers and they have nothing for Anthony Davis and LeBron, it's like, well, great, the shooting's fine, but if you can't rebound, and you're gonna lose it when you play Jokic. And so I think, to your point, Coach, they will in fact probably keep draft Wiseman. Although, somebody could call and Joe Lacob could get excited by having Bradley Beal or some other big name, and well, there goes that.
The money, though, is a factor because Wiseman is in a year, he'll be way less expensive than his value because of that draft slot, right? And when it's time to pay him, they can pay him more because they already have him, as opposed to bringing a free agent. If they're going to keep those other 3 guys, that's the big question. I think we'd all love to see, just for posterity's sake, maybe Dre, Clay, and Steph finish, right? Play to 38, 36, all in Golden State. That'd be cool. I mean, they are one of the most iconic teams of all time, it's fair to say, right? Even they don't win anymore. They've revolutionized the game in some ways. If they want to add talent to that, they're going to have to do it through the draft.
Yeah.
Because those guys aren't going to pay for minimums.
No.
So Wiseman's the way you do it.
And the other thing they have to keep in mind, too, is I think Steph and Clay, like, their games will age fine. It's Draymond's game as he ages, right? Like, what's that going to look like? And then how do you – because he'll be so important to Wiseman's development. As much as it's about Steph and the culture, Draymond, like, teaching him, no, here, pick up this, right? Like, it's that's going to get him to be, again, accelerate that growth curve. So that'll be fascinating to watch.
I'm a little worried about Steph, like, being Steph's height on defense and old.
Well, there's
I'm a little worried about that, but yeah.
I think
so,
I don't ever place a lot of stock. Gerard, you're not wrong. Draymond is crazy brilliant, like mad scientist brilliant on defense in terms of understanding of the game. I never like to rely on players doing the teaching. We actually pay coaches lots of money to do it. I think Golden State does a good job of that. I think Dre's ability as a passer really helps Wiseman. They are going to be closer together in the Cuisinart that they run, where Draymond's ability to make simple plays or hard plays look simple, getting easy assists, knowing that defense are worried about Clay and Steph, that two-man game can be really effective. And where I think players do more than what we respect is not the teaching as much as the accountability on the court. So because Steve Kerr doesn't want to be benching James Wiseman.
Right.
And so there's some limit there to what you can do. But Dre says, hey, motherfucker, what are you doing? Like, you see it in the games all the time. The cameras don't catch them. Oh, this year they caught more because the mics were there because no fans. But you saw players like, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. Like, you got to get there, especially after a timeout. Mm-hmm. Like LeBron would go right to someone like, hey, what are you doing there? You got to get here. I can see Dre doing that with Wiseman a lot. Yeah. And I like that urgency. Don't ask him to do too much, but ask him to do enough, and you'll start seeing progress from there. And again, intelligence matters. The kid appears to be a very bright young man and wants to learn. And if you're James Wiseman, I mean, do you really want to be the franchise guy? I think it's a mistake. For any center, I think it's a mistake. Like, I think DeAndre Ayton's lucky to have Devin Booker.
Yeah.
Right? He's going to be a better player because of it. And Phoenix is going to be interesting now. We'll see in a year if Phoenix continues what they did, and all of a sudden they're a playoff team, and Ayton is an anchor, not the anchor, an anchor. You'll start seeing the flip again of, they've screwed up not taking Luka, but they ended up being just fine, right? Mm-hmm. And maybe they'd argue even Luka and Booker may not play so well together. But Luka's really throwing a wrench. It's funny. The serve is throwing a wrench, and Jokic too a little bit, but certainly Luka. The idea that you can't take a big when Luka's available is true with Luka, but there's only one Luka.
Dallas will be interesting, right? Like, going forward now, we know Luka's going to be what he is, which is a perennial All-NBA MVP candidate. Like, the Porzingis, gamble, that's going to be so telltale for them, right? Like, if he can stay healthy, because if he can, I think he's a capable two, and then you get some stuff around them. I mean, that's the scariest playoff team.
Luka's LeBron, guys. Luka finds people to throw to and can lead your team in scoring and run your team. And Porzingis is a two-way player. He's not just an offensive player. In fact, I think I just read the other day he was an underrated defensive player. There's a new metric. Oh, I forget who wrote about it. I'm embarrassed now. There's another defensive metric they're using. It's really good. Might be 538s. I don't remember who did it. It's called the Draymond.
That's 538.
538, yeah. And I believe Porzingis tested better. I know when I'm watching, he can get out and guard. Like, he's a guard. He's one of these other guys. We didn't mention it because they were in the playoffs not long. But, he's a mobile, very tall dude. Very agile. Like, he's another reason why Wiseman's a no-brainer.
That was my favorite part of your article was James and his crouch stance on defense. I was like, oh, because remember we watched that French kid, and I was like, he moves pretty good, coach. But I love the way you articulated. Yeah, but look at the crouch on defense. That's what tells me he's going to be fine because he can move fluidly from that position.
He'll be in my LaMelo piece. Just wait, Gerard. That French kid, you'll see. You'll see how I do it.
So if I'm James Wiseman and I feel like I can be Bam Adebayo or this year Anthony Davis, I'm nervous about the number of talented big men who have not had those opportunities in the past, right? Like, you could argue we've mismanaged and not gotten the most out of a whole bunch of Lamar Odoms and Kevin Garnett's and whatever, right? This is where it makes me mad about the draft a little bit, where he might end up on a team where they just want him to do boring,
center
uninventive
stuff.
Not leading the next generation of championship contender stuff, right? And it seems crazy to me that, he could end up, I don't even know what Charlotte would do with him, but we see Charlotte's excited. But Anthony Davis in New Orleans is actually kind of a sad story where he wasn't doing the things that just won a championship, right? Because he wasn't in that situation. He wasn't that healthy. And anyway, I'm like, don't you want the pressure on the teams to make a home that's attractive to James Wiseman?
Yes. So I propose now, Henry will make the final decision. Gerard, we should do a draft week after the draft, and we spend 3 episodes focused on what the league could look like without the draft. And we talk. Henry knows a bunch of experts. I know a few to talk about it, but I completely agree with Henry. I think we should not have a draft. I think the league would be way better off. The players would be way better off. We would weed out a lot of these executives who hang on because of the hope of a draft. But what Henry's saying is exactly right. In fact, you brought up an important point, Henry, when you talk about a potential downside. It's not unique to Wiseman. I happen to think there are some franchises who do a poor job managing their players' bodies.
Yeah.
Whether it's a bad trainer, bad trainers, bad systems, coaches overdoing it in practice, whatever. Big men who have all that weight on the bones of the same size. I hate, Weissman's going to be 250 or so at some point, probably.
Big man.
Yeah, you got to protect it.
I mean, the Greg Oden program didn't work out.
No, not.
Yeah, Yao Ming, a lot of guys. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't Houston's fault. Yao was already big, but it's scary, especially if we're asking to guard all the space.
Yeah, that's the thing.
They're running around, stopping and starting, jumping, landing. Defend the 3, race to the rim, rebound in traffic. Their bodies are really being challenged in ways that never before have seen. Bill Russell and Will Chamberlain ran rim the rim. Boom, there's a race, rim the rim. And a lot of rebounds because no one was making any shots. But not like that.
The Warriors aren't exactly killing it here with this injury prevention thing either, to be fair. But
it's a challenge for all of it. Yeah.
Well, I think that's interesting, right? So would an not unintended, maybe that is the intended consequence of a no draft force teams not right away. After several years of this, well, the reason we're not getting anybody is because we're bad at the show us your work stuff, right? Like when you go on a job interview and a company's booming in you and whatever, they show you all the things about why you'll be successful here. Well, if I come to your place and you suck at 2 guys get ACLs every year, and then, well, I'm not going to you. You stink. Like, well, that seems to be like, well, we got to get better at this because we're not getting anybody.
Yeah, look at our
first hire, right? When you took over the Pelicans was to fix the medical staff, right?
Right.
Went to a great expense, got Aaron Nelson from the Suns, who has a certain reputation, right? And I know that, to your point, Gerard, I remember the story of LaMarcus Aldridge being a free agent. At that time, he was considered a very desirable free agent. But in the Lakers pitch, he basically was like, "What are you going to do? What situations will you put me in? How will we succeed together?" And they were like, "Oh, don't worry about that. Like, we got this." And he was like, "Meeting over." I think that's a good pressure to have on a team, right?
I think so too. So save this for our draft week, or however you want to call it, Henry. But I do think that eventually, I think we're going to get to that point. Yeah, I think eventually
it will force teams, right? Because the whole people who don't like that, the idea of everyone's going to go to LA and New York is not true. Like, there's only 12 roster spots. Everyone's not going to one team. They have to go to other places.
Well, and if you're in this case, James Wiseman, you would probably have the choice of, a max deal from Charlotte or, a $5 million from the Warriors. And, not everyone's going to pick the Warriors in that scenario, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think it's a no-brainer. It's just going to take some time. It's all about, do we always have to do what we've always done? It used to be, and the answer is no. It used to be you always took a center, and now not, right? Which is an issue with Wiseman. It was the whole point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's a better future for him.
The point is just take this center. That's the point.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Again, if Luka's in the draft, I take Luka.
Yeah.
If LeBron's in the draft, I take LeBron. If Wiggins in the draft, I take James Wiseman.
Poor Andrew Wiggins.
Yeah. I love Andrew Wiggins, but I wouldn't take him over James Wiseman.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, David. Thank you, Gerard. Thank you, Judy. See you guys Friday.
Be safe.